It was June 2002 in Columbia, South Carolina. The school was now out for the summer holidays, and Kira Robinson, who was 15 years of age at the time, was excited to spend some quality time with her best friend Heather and her boyfriend Chris. Kira had started the night out at Heather's house, having a sleepover. And the following day, the two had got up and decided, what should we do? Where should we go? How can we have some fun? The pair then decided on spending some time down at the lake together, swimming, sunbathing, chatting, listening to music. It just seemed like a great idea. So the two girls called their parents just to let them know where they were going and what time they would be back. Heather's mother had asked the girls, after they'd stayed over, if they could at least water the plants for her before they left and then headed out for the day, to which the pair agreed. But Heather needed to get in the shower, so Kira offered to go out and water all the plants for Heather's mother so that at least they could all go straight to the lake after Heather had gotten out of the shower. In the early afternoon on June the 24th, 2002, as Kira stood watering the plants and bushes in the front yard of her friend's house in West Columbia, South Carolina, she happened to look up and noticed a green Pontiac Trans Am vehicle drive out of the street, but then suddenly it re-entered the street again, this time parking up on Heather's driveway. Kira looked up from what she was doing, still trying to work out who this was in this car, possibly wondering if it was one of Heather's family or friends. A man got out of the car. He was Caucasian. He had a baseball cap on, facial hair. He stood there with jeans on and a button-down shirt, carrying some kind of folder or binder in his arm. Kira stood there looking confused as the man asked if her parents were home. Kira told him that this was not her parents' house, but her friend's home, and the parents were not in at the moment. The man was holding out some kind of leaflets at this point and said, well, would you be able to hand these to them for when they get back? To which Kira said yes. The man stepped forwards, holding out the leaflets to Kira. This was when she felt like this normal interaction had suddenly turned into fear, as Kira felt something cold and hard pressed up against the side of her neck. Kira was so scared. The man now had his arm around her shoulders and this GUN pointing against her neck. In this moment, Kira did not know what to do, but one thing she did know was not to startle, struggle or scream, as he told her to get into the back of his car. On the back seat sat a large black plastic container, and the man was asking Kira to get inside of it. Kira hoped that maybe somebody was watching. Somebody was seeing what was going on right now, that they'd called the police, that they'd taken down the car registration, anything. But unfortunately, no one was there. Just her and this man, who was so much bigger than her. He had the advantage, the size, and the GUN. As Kira got inside this black plastic container on the back of this man's seats, she knew why this man wanted to take her. She knew that she would more than likely be RAPED'd. But she didn't want to think any further than that, to the worst case scenario. What she did know was that she needed to try and remember as much about this man and his car as possible, so that when she did eventually escape, she needed to be able to give the police as much information as possible. While Kira was inside the black tub, she thought about how she could gain the man's trust, befriend him, and possibly then escape. She tried to take note of where they were going. She knew the area well, so she tried to imagine that she was in the front seat and the turns that they were making and where they might be going. She saw a serial number on the inside of the container that she was in. She tried to memorize that. She listened to the songs playing in the car, anything she could remember to tell the police later on. After about 15 minutes of the car moving, the man stopped the car at the side of the road. He got out, came around to the back and opened the lid to the tub. He looked in at Kira before placing handcuffs on her and a gag in her mouth, fastening her legs together before replacing the lid and getting back into the front seat of the car. Kira remained calm. She didn't struggle. She kept cool. The man did all of this with such precision. It was as if he had done it before. Kira reminded herself over and over, remain calm, gain his trust, escape. Only a few minutes later, the car pulled up again, but this time it parked. She was laid in a fetal position within the box, and the man lifted the box out, placing it on the ground next to the car. He reminded Kira not to scream, not to make a sound or struggle. The man dragged the box along the concrete and then onto what felt like a hardwood floor, as if he had taken her into his home. Back at the house, Heather was worried about her friend. She had walked outside the house to find the hosepipe laid on the ground, abandoned and still running, with Kira nowhere in sight. She ended up calling the police, telling them that her friend had just disappeared from her driveway. When police arrived at Heather's house, they looked around the driveway. There was no signs of a struggle. Apart from the hosepipe being there, abandoned and still running, there was nothing found that was concerning. Police contacted Kira's family, but no one had seen her. They were now worried. When a neighbour came over from the street, she said that she'd seen a green Trans Am in the driveway and that Kira was seen talking to a man that had gotten out of it. The neighbour described Kira as getting into the back of this man's car, but Kira's mother said that her daughter would never, ever get into the back of a random person's car. Back at the apartment, the man opened the lid to the box, telling Kira that he would take her out, take the gag and the restraints off her, so long as she didn't scream or struggle, reminding her that he still had the GUN. Kira started to poke around. She had no idea where she was or who this man was, but she started taking mental notes of anything she could. She talked to the man. She looked at the man's mail, taking note of his name, Richard. She noticed his doctors and dentists through fridge magnets that he had on the fridge. The man had pets, lizards and fish. So she started trying to make conversation with him regarding them, trying to gain his trust, show him interest, constantly keeping calm and trying to remember everything he said to her, everything she could see. Kira also noted through medals and photos that the man had served in the Navy, asking him about his time serving, asking him what it was like. This man, Richard, seemed very polite. He sat down with a pen and piece of paper, asking Kira all about the things that only her loved ones would know about her, and even wanted to know if she had a boyfriend. He asked if she had any sex experiences, that kind of thing, as he made notes on his bit of paper. After taking down all these notes, Richard then proceeded to RAP Kira over and over again, as he held the GUN in his hand the whole time. Kira had already mentally started preparing for this. She knew as soon as she was forced into the car that this was coming. After all, why do men randomly take young women? Kira remained calm, just laying there trying to remain mentally strong, while all she wanted to do was cry and run. This Richard told her that after he was done with her, he would let her go, and then it was up to her whether she went to the police or not. She didn't know whether to believe him. Back at home, Kira's family were devastated. They tried to hold it all together as many search parties were made, walking miles into the late night, into the dark, looking for her, and hoping that she would still be found alive. The police started trying to gain as much information on this green car man as possible, looking into CCTV and trying to work out who and where he had come from. After her ordeal with this Richard, Kara went to the bathroom to clean herself up. She noticed that there was female hygiene products in the bathroom, as well as a hairbrush with long, dark red hairs within it. Did Richard have a girlfriend or a wife? Or had another girl that he had taken been here? When Kara came back from the bathroom, Richard told her that he needed to make a phone call and that she had to get back into the box. Although because she had remained calm, he would not restrain her this time. So she got back in the box, again curled up in the fetal position, but all of a sudden Kira started breathing fast. It was almost like a panic attack. The more she tried to remain calm, the more she struggled to breathe. Richard came over to find out what was wrong, and Kara told him that she couldn't breathe, so he left the lid off the box and walked away. Richard walked off to call his wife. Later that night, Richard offered Kara a smoke, and they both smoked the green stuff together before he slipped something into her drink, a sedative. Then, when Kira woke up, she was strapped to the frame of this wooden bed, with fluffy handcuffs reinforced with wire on her hands, holding her to the wooden posts. Her right leg was also attached to the bottom of the bed. She looked to the left and saw the man laid beside her. When Kira woke up the following morning to light coming through the crack in the curtains, she was still strapped to the bed. The man Richard was still laid next to her, heavy breathing as he slept. This was the best time, if any, to get away, she thought. The handcuffs were too tight for her to squeeze her hands out of them, but somehow she was able to loosen the clasps with her teeth. She did this slowly and quietly as not to wake the man up. Kira pulled on a shirt belonging to the man, and as she got to the front door, she saw the black box that she had been kept in. She moved it away from the door. This was her one shot, and she needed to take it. As she unlocked the door with the key that she'd found, all while this man slept, she opened the door and ran for her life. The bedroom window where the man was still sleeping looked directly onto the front garden, and she imagined the man stood at the window with his gun. As she ran and ran, she hoped that she would not be shot. Kira saw a car and ran out in front of it, waving her arms around to get them to stop. The two men in the front of the car stopped, looking shocked, and Kira opened their door and she jumped inside and asked them to remember the apartment building. She told them that she had been taken by this man and held as a prisoner, and asked them to please take her to the police station as she curled up on the back seat with her head in her arms. The men were shocked at what they had heard coming from this young girl. They did take note of this apartment building that she was talking about, and the men drove to the Richland County Sheriff's Department, where Kira told them all about what had gone on, absolutely everything she could remember. As she sat there, she felt the officer that she was talking to did not believe a word that she was saying. It was as if he felt that she had some kind of mental illness and she was making it all up. An investigator was brought in, and he recorded her evidence and listened intently. Of course, her parents were informed that Kira was still alive and had been found. Kira did need to go to the hospital. She had to have examination and swabs, something that no young woman should ever have to go through, well, any of it. The investigator took Kira back to where the two men had found her. Kira pointed at the apartment block where she had ran from, although she couldn't exactly remember which flat it was. After speaking to the manager of the apartments and giving a physical description, eventually the exact apartment was found, although by the time police kicked down this door, Richard was gone. Police looked through this man's things, including his post, and soon discovered his full name: Richard Evantich. Richard had been born in Columbia, South Carolina. He was the first of 3 children born to his parents Joseph and Tessa. He was the only son in the family, growing up with 2 sisters. When Richard had been quite young, everything he knew was normal was shattered when his parents split up and got divorced. His parents described Richard as being intelligent but having quite a bad temper. At the age of 12, Richard started drinking and smoking the green stuff. Richard would start breaking into neighbours' homes, taking money, alcohol, and his parents were constantly bailing him out and trying to clear up his messes. His parents had both had affairs on each other, and everybody knew about it. After the parents got divorced, his mother started a phone relationship with a convicted murderer who was in prison for life after stabbing a girl 27 times. His mother, Tess, got married to this man in prison and then 12 years later got divorced from him too. After school, Richard became the manager of Jiffy Lube, which was an oil change service company. Before joining up for the Navy, he worked as a sonar technician and was honourably discharged after about 8 years of service. After leaving the Navy, Richard had worked for companies who specialised in grinding equipment, and not long after this, Richard, who had been married at this point to his first wife, was getting a divorce. Richard then married his second wife, although the couple never had any children, and as police officers searched Richard's apartment, they came across all sorts of information. They found info regarding all of the vehicles that he had access to, and a footlocker that they opened, and inside it would blow this case up wider than they had ever imagined. In the box was a newspaper from Virginia. The headline read, "Two sisters' bodies located in a river." There were handwritten notes about young girls, including more newspaper clippings of more girls that had been found murdered, all from the 1990s. The Virginia police were notified, and the detectives began to compare notes regarding things that had been found in this footlocker and about the cases. This led detectives to question whether Richard had taken these girls in the 90s and, if not escaped like Kira, had then been the girls in the headlines of these newspapers and had been met by Richard. The FBI were brought in to help locate Richard, now seemed to be on the run. The FBI were able to locate Richard's wife, who at the time was in Disney World with her mother on vacation. She seemed completely unaware of what was going on, and the officers were even looking for her husband. While his wife and her mother were away in Disney World, maybe he had felt that it was a good opportunity for him to take a young girl, and that's why he took Kira. When the FBI spoke with Richard's sisters, one of them had said that she had spoken to him and that he'd been staying in a motel only 40 miles away. But again, when officers swooped in on this motel, Richard was gone. Investigators noted that Richard's phone had been turned on and was pinging in the Jacksonville, Florida area, putting on a bolo, be on the lookout, to all officers. They searched for Richard's car and eventually they saw it in the area. A high-speed chase began, with Richard trying to outrun the cops. Up ahead, they threw out a mat to burst his tyres, and as he ran over it, his tyres blew out, and they sent a canine dog over to recover him. However, before officers could get Richard out of the car safely, he placed his gun inside of his mouth and pulled the trigger. When Kira found out that Richard had taken his own life, she was angry that she would not get her day in court to confront him, for her to get justice for what he had done, for him to have to sit in prison for what he had done. But unfortunately now, as far as Kira's case was concerned, it was closed. But this was far from over, as using forensics, detectives were able to link Richard to the murder of a young girl in 1996, Sophia Silver. She was only 16 at the time. She had been on her porch of her home when she'd been taken by Richard. There was again no signs of a struggle. Her family had been inside the house and not heard anything, and a month later her body was discovered in a creek off State Route 3 in King George County. There was also another case that detectives were able to link Richard to. Sisters, 15-year-old Kirsten and 12-year-old Katie, who were, again, taken from their front yard of their home after getting home from school in 1997. That was in Fredericksburg. Their father had come home to find the girls missing and one of their school bags left abandoned on the driveway. For 5 days, their family searched for them, wondered where they were, until both bodies had been found with ligatures around their necks in the Anna River. All of these girls found had their pubic areas shaved. All of these girls had been taken from their homes without a sign of a struggle, without a sound. They had all been found suffocated or strangled, their pubic areas shaved and found in water. So when forensics finally linked Richard to these girls, it was no surprise to detectives. There were other cold cases that they believed Richard was possibly responsible for, including Alicia Reynolds in Culpeper, Virginia, after finding handwritten directions inside his footlocker that took them directly to Alicia's dump site. He is also thought to be responsible for many SEX attacks across the country, after Richard lived in Florida, California, Virginia and South Carolina, as well as his travels whilst enlisted in the Navy. As Kira grew up, she decided to work in law enforcement, getting a job as a response officer before moving into investigations, and now working with victim services. Kira eventually became a mother, and during this time she had problems decompartmentalizing the things that had happened to her. She used exercise as a way of coping with things, and she is now a mother, an author, a content creator, a keynote speaker and a victims advocate. She enjoys telling her story, educating others, showing strength, helping others process their emotions, showing women how you can move forward after trauma. Lifetime did release a Lifetime movie about Kira's story. It's called The Girl Who Escaped, the Kira Robinson story. So you can go across and find that on Lifetime. If you've enjoyed today's video, there are many more to watch here on YouTube as well as on TikTok. Please press the like. We really appreciate all the likes. You can follow for more updates and all the latest stories on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram and YouTube, all at CrimeStoriesObsessed, who are always here remembering the victims and their families, as their stories will always be important. They will always live on. Thank you for watching wherever you are in the world. From everyone here at Crime Stories Obsessed, we wish you a good day. Please stay safe wherever you are in this world. Goodbye.